your mother. It's time for another episode of Birds with Friends. Just the
duo
of feathery brethren, weathering any season to see the Eagles eat teams like Scrammy's top with cheese. It's Philadelphia. Both and Zach kicking it cooler than
two.
When still Zach runs off with his valet keys. He's a real nuanced goose. Pull up a branch, get loose. It's time for some juice on some Birds with Friends. The early bird gets the worm, but prefers getting turned like a turn on some Birds with Friends. Both and Zach coming at you with stats and things flapping.
We are going to rip out the hearts of other podcasts. We are going to bite off their eyeballs. We're going to start every segment watching the scene from The Last of the Mohicans where the guy takes a bite out of the other guy's heart. We may not be good, but we're going to be nasty. We're going to reflect the blue-collar nature of this city. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Birds with Friends on a Wednesday afternoon, 2:37 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to be precise. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman, Marissa Dunn. Marissa, how are you?
I am doing great. Excited that we have a special guest coming on the podcast today. Dan Duggan, our Giants reporter, who I used to have a Giants pod. Unfortunately, don't anymore, but love talking to Dan. So, yeah, big show. How are you guys?
Big year for Dan. Doesn't have to cover a terrible team anymore. Has a
yes.
partner
Big
on the
difference.
beat. Good stuff. So stay tuned for that interview. That'll be at the end of the episode. Some good insight and preview into crowing thine enemy. And then we can talk a little bit more about that specific matchup on Friday's show. But today we've got some Eagles news to talk about, some roster machinations, some thoughts on the game from last Sunday. And Zach, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for this pod. Look forward to every podcast, but especially the ones that are not late at night. And it's a big week.
Yeah, but those are the best.
Best,
right? I mean,
subjective. It's a.
What do you think the listeners and maybe the live commenters can weigh in on this? Where would you rank your enjoyment of the three when we do a 3 weekly? When we do 3 pods in a week, we go a Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. How do you rank those episodes?
How do I would rank Friday highest.
Okay.
Sunday second.
As a super hater, you rank Friday highest. That's interesting.
I feel like those are substantive. We're talking about the game. It's the end of the week. It's fun. It's a loose audience. Post game, I often feel as if it's not my best performance. Right? You don't have time to prepare for it. You're worn out from writing, or you haven't had a chance to process the game. It's more emotional. I like the Wednesday pod, but I think today's a really good one because we have a guest. I think this is a real good day for a fourth person to join us.
I think that's right. Shout out to Hacksaw. Zach, you got an event tonight. You want to plug that for the people who are watching live?
Sure. 6:30 tonight. If you're watching live or if you catch this before then, I'll be at Puddler's Pub in Bridgeport, and I'll be there signing books. There's a lot of other things going on there. Mike Sealski is signing his book. Ray Didinger is signing his book. I believe Leslie Van Arsdale will be there signing her book that she did with Brian Westbrook. Charlie Manuel has a clothing company. I believe that's there. Shipe Sports is there. And then, good beer, good food, and a good time. So you can get in front of your holiday shopping there. And as I've said on this podcast, if you can't make it tonight, but you're interested in a signed copy with Underdogs, you can DM me, you can email me.
Show up at your house.
There's no need to show up at my house. And I'll be happy to sign a book for you. Or as I've done in the past, if you want to meet in South Philly one day, I'd be happy to do that as well.
What's your routine for one of these bad boys? What goes into the prep? You got to psych yourself up. Tell me a little bit about the Berman process for the in-person meetings.
For the book signings.
For the book signings. Are you gonna have a helper with you?
No, I'm not gonna have help, and it's a lot of times the other writers have help, and I tend to do these on my own, and so I have I try
bootstraps kind of guy, like a true underdog.
It's nice. The real cool thing about this is you get a chance to meet people, and I'm also cognizant of I don't want to hold up the line. There have been times when I engage in conversation and then someone else is waiting. But if I can be completely honest, and I'm not being self-deprecating here, this is the truth. the best part about doing this with Ray Didinger is so popular. And this is no shot at Mike Sealski as well, but I've done this with Ray Didinger.
It feels like a shot at Sealski, but
he's so popular that there will be such a bottleneck of people waiting for Didinger, and
they got to figure out something else to do.
Yeah, and they're kind of like standing in front of you, and this is, oh, so what's your book about? It's actually it's about the 2017 Eagles team that won the Super Bowl, and it takes you behind the scenes of the people, and the moments and everything that made that team special. It brings you to Fargo, North Dakota, the Carson Wentz's hometown. Although I stopped selling the Carson Wentz thing recently. I'll bring you to Malcolm Jenkins' house in Piscataway, Fletcher Cox's living room in Yazoo City, and like I have this whole sales pitch, and they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's great," and then I signed it. So in any event, please, if you have the time, come out. Be happy to sign a book for you.
Zach Grace in the comments says that you had a longer line than Diddy last year.
I appreciate that, Grace. No, Ray's the GOAT. So yeah, Ray gets. But I love going and thanks.
When's the last time he won Sports Writer of the Year?
I think he's won it 4 times. So
yeah, but so what have you done for me lately?
We did also get a comment, Zach, from Ian. Would you sign his baby's head?
So
forehead.
I got to tell you this, Ian. A lot of writers use Sharpies. I don't use a Sharpie. I use a pen. So you don't want me to sign your baby's head. And I'm lefty, and so if I use a Sharpie, it sometimes gets on my on my hand, and so I use a pen instead. So I would be afraid of puncturing your baby's skin with the pen. With the pen.
That could be a drop. Have you ever signed a body part, Zach?
No, I haven't.
Would you sign a body part?
Would I sign it? Probably not. I would. I mean, I've written on someone's hand before. Does that count? Like I've written my phone number on someone's hand.
Oh, all right. Tell us more.
So the Eagles, they
did you read obviously you read the Andrew Luck story, the Seth Wickersham story, right?
Seth was awesome. That was great. Yeah.
Well, he's got the thing in there about how he got his future wife's number by pretending that he had lost his phone and asking her to call it. I want to know is this how you picked up Emily? You wrote your name on her phone or on her hand?
No, that is not. I wish it were that easy to pick up Emily. Yes. Anyways, Avonte Maddox. We should get to that. But
all right, let's.
It's funny, by the way, that Bo was saying, I don't know what we have to discuss on this pod, and then we're already 8 minutes in, and we haven't talked Eagles yet.
Well, yeah, we got to stretch out. We got to stretch out the nonsense if there's not enough beef.
But in all seriousness, I hope to see as many of you as who can make it out tonight. And again, I mean this genuinely. I have a list of things of books I'm sending out next week in time for Christmas. So if you want a copy and you're not around here, I'll be happy to do that.
If you had a sports pub yourself, what would you name it? Underdogs?
If I had a sports pub, Underdogs is actually a good one. Come to think of it.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Birds with
What
Friends.
would yours be, Bo?
Or Bar with Friends.
Got to think about it. Might be Underdogs.
No, you should be the Wolf Pack, right?
Wolf Pack? I don't know.
Yeah.
The Den? I don't know. All right. Well, there have been some roster moves made by the Eagles. Some reports that they might be interested in a certain high-profile free agent wide receiver. A lot of scuttlebutt about this 11-1 team. So we send it over to the NovaCare complex by way of somewhere in the suburbs of Philadelphia. The Stone Cold Newsman himself, Zach Berman.
I will get right into it then. The Eagles placed Robert Quinn on IR yesterday. So Robert Quinn out the next 4 weeks.
And boy, was he really coming on.
Robert Quinn will not return until the earliest being week 18 against the New York Giants. They activated
just in time for the playoff push.
Just in time for the in time for the playoffs. Yes. They activated defensive end Janarius Robinson from injured reserve. They also waived Andre Sacheret opening a spot on the 53-man roster. And you might be wondering, oh, they're opening a spot on the 53-man roster. What do they have in mind? Well, the answer could be Avonte Maddox, because Avonte Maddox, who is eligible to return this week against the New York Giants, the Eagles activated his 21-day practice window. He is at walkthrough now as we speak, although walkthrough might have wrapped up a few minutes ago. And he'll be on the practice field tomorrow. And assuming he has no issue as far as covering wide receivers and no reoccurrence with the hamstring injury, you can expect him back on Sunday against the New York Giants. So that's something to watch. The Eagles also made a few practice squad transactions. Anthony Rush is a Javelin Goudre and Kawan Baker were released from the practice squad.
Rush.
And then today they brought back Marvin Wilson and Roderick Johnson to the practice squad. You might notice they released 3. They re-signed 2. My guess is Andre Sacheret will get one of those spots. So that is open for Sacheret to potentially clear waivers and return to the practice squad. That's the hard news, if you will. There is a report out there, as you mentioned, to watch out for the Eagles, or speculation, however you want to term it, to watch out for the Eagles with Odell Beckham Jr. Nick Sirianni asked about that today, and he said he likes his wide receivers room. It's the best wide receivers room he has ever been a part of. So take that for what you will. Sirianni didn't give much as far as the injuries. The injuries being Kaiser White, Jordan Davis, and Quez Watkins. So we'll get a injury report later today to have more clarity there. Back to you in the studio, Bo.
Thanks, Zach. I've a few things I want to discuss with you along these news fronts. Very esoteric, in the weeds roster stuff. What could Anthony Rush have possibly done over the 3 days that he was in the NovaCare complex to lose his spot to Marvin Wilson, who they had already released from the practice squad?
Fair question. I don't have a good answer
think
for you.
Just showed up and was in like mean to everybody.
No,
or
so
think he was injured. Like, I mean, could be anything. It's just funny.
I don't want to speak out of turn here, because I don't want to say something without knowing. But we're 3 friends talking here. It's birds with friends, right? And I heard in the past when they've done this practice squad shuffling, practice squad roulette, however you want to frame it, there might be like salary things that go into it, whether it's you get a guy paid a certain, if they're on the roster a certain day, you might be able to. So I don't know if it's something about that, because there have been situations where like they've cut a guy 1 week and they brought him back 2 weeks later, and they keep going back and forth with it. And it could be something related to that. I don't know. It could be related to guarantees and contracts, right?
It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
I think if you're on the roster at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, you're paid for the week.
Yes. Thank you, Marissa.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was alluding to. So yeah. So that if you get them on the roster 1 week, you can have them paid, and then you can make it. So that's something that I had heard in the past.
I mean, it's just funny to me that, you bring in a guy for his like nose tackle body, a guy who's been here in the past, famously released for Orlando Scandrick as an undrafted rookie.
I love how you say famously. That's a loose term for famous, loose definition of famous.
And then you replace him with a similar, like the guy at the same position who you had already decided was expendable. Anyway,
wait, but there was one other thing I didn't mention in the news, which I should have. Jalen Hurts was named NFC. Or there's 2 things I should mention. Jalen Hurts was named NFC Offensive Player of the Week. The first time in Eagles history, a player has won a Player of the Week in back-to-back weeks. And the second time in the NFL that's happened this season. Josh Allen did it week 5, week 6. Also, I think this is worth noting, Brandon Graham was named Eagles candidate for Man of the Year, the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. And if you want to check out, there is a video that the Eagles put out when they notified Graham.
Got a little dusty.
Graham. And yeah,
those videos are great.
Oh man,
yeah,
I think
really
across the league they've done that.
If it was like 55 seconds long, if it had been like 75 seconds long, I would have fully been in tears.
Oh, I don't think you watched the full version on YouTube. Then it's like 7 minutes.
Oh yeah, I'll be
okay.
pumped.
Yeah, and so you see all the people that he's that he's influenced and affected throughout the years. No, I shouldn't say all the people, a group of people that he has. And it speaks to Brandon Graham that sometimes and for good reason, the man of the year candidate is someone who has a very public foundation or does very public acts of goodness. And Brandon Graham, it seems to be more of these behind the scenes things that he's done that have really big influences on people. So you can check that out. It seems like a deserving candidate.
He talked a little bit about it today. And I will say, we make fun of the hashtag even better guy stuff. Like, we don't really know what these guys are actually like in their personal lives, right? But I can say from having been in the building that without question, Brandon Graham is more generous with his time than almost anyone I can remember. And he's been around for so long that he has this lasting legacy, as they showed in that video, of all these people who, were profoundly impacted by him just being generous with his time with, a 10-minute interaction, a 2-minute interaction, and being like very present for those moments. And he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Well said. And it's a good takeaway. I mean, a far be it for me to give any player or coach or executive advice, but when you're in that role, like, any interaction you have with someone is a memorable interaction for the person you're having it with. And Brandon Graham really seems to embrace that. So credit to him.
Yeah, good stuff there. Robert Quinn. I made fun of because the tweet when the news broke was like he was really coming on and just starting to learn the defense. Meanwhile, his snaps had gone down and declined every week, and he was doing absolutely nothing. But it's also very funny that they waited until Monday to put him on IR. Like, they were so unconcerned about getting him back that they didn't even bother doing it before that last game so that they could maybe get him back sooner. What do you make of, like, how much of a loss this is right now, and how much does it affect your thoughts on the trade that was made in the first place?
So TBD. First off, he's clearly been dealing with something, and I'm trying to credit. I think it was Tim McManus who had something up about
the best.
He wasn't feeling right. And when I say Quinn, he went to them last week. I'd have to find it, and I think he might have gotten arthroscopic surgery. Is that right? So that could have been the impetus for the timing of it on Monday. But yeah, look, he's one of the best pass rushers of the past decade, and he hasn't looked like that in the past few weeks. So as far as how the trade looks now, hasn't given them much during the regular season. If anything, we'll see in the postseason. It could be a situation where they have a postseason game and Quinn comes around the edge and makes a big sack. But right now, I mean, I'm not going to kill the trade because it would be hypocritical of me. I thought it was, at the time, I thought it was a good move to make. And
I don't think it's hypocritical.
It's not hypocritical. Okay, yeah.
No, so because we said at the time that, like, his production has completely dropped off a cliff. He has been one of the least productive per snap pass rushers in the league this year when they made the trade, right? And so the assumption was they knew a little something that we didn't, and maybe it was just because he was getting double teamed or he was getting extra attention from opposing defenses. We talked about this as a guy who was known to be available to the entire league. So it's not like the Eagles were able to swoop in with an offer. Like, they gave what was the highest offer for a guy who had been around for a long time. Everybody else seemed to be a little bit skittish. If no one else is willing to offer a 4th-round pick, it made sense because, they needed an extra body. But if he really is totally off the cliff, and part of the reason for getting him was to allow everybody else to have a bit fewer snaps over the course of the second half of the season so that everybody could be fresh for the playoffs, that part has failed. So I don't know. I think we're allowed to be critical of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I'm just saying, like, I can't say now, like, oh, I saw this coming, because I didn't see this coming. But yeah, they gave a 4th-round pick for someone who's done very little and is on IR now for, so he'll miss at least 5 games because he missed his previous game, and he'll miss the next 4. And we don't know what he's going to do in the postseason. So certainly hasn't looked good.
Yeah. All right, why don't we take a little break, come back, let's talk a little Odell Beckham, and then I want to ask you about Andre Sacheret. What a tease that is. Marissa,
Sorry, the ad is still loading.
Oh, okay.
So,
Hold
you
on,
know what?
hold
We
on.
thought you were the best producer there was.
No, she is the best producer.
it's
Typically, we go
in-
much longer before the break. So
No, it's usually
on me.
loaded, but I've been having an issue with the videos today, so hold on.
So real quick, I want to
It
ask
is
Bo while we're
processing.
waiting.
Okay.
I want to ask Bo while we're waiting. What do you think it must be like to be a Washington Nationals fan right now and to see your two cornerstone players playing on the Phillies, or three cornerstones? Because, well, Soto's not playing on the Phillies, but you had these three guys who were at the heart of your lineup, and now one's in San Diego and the other two are in Philly.
I mean, probably not great.
Yeah.
I mean, they had like the tied for the worst record in baseball last year. I would imagine that it doesn't feel great to be a fan.
Great signing for the Phillies, though. Trey Turner. He's the perfect fit, and I've always been a Walker fan, Twan Walker, even though I've drafted him in fantasy too many times and haven't gotten ROI. I didn't have him last year, but
you like a former prospect, name prospect,
yes.
Shine, right? Yeah.
I'm big on pedigreed players, yes, and he's a pedigreed player.
Yeah. And how do you feel about Matt Stram?
That I'm trusting Dombrowski on that one. Don't I mean, I don't love paying relievers as it is, right? Because I think there's such variability with relievers, and so I know that's kind of the going rate there, but I've seen reliever contracts like guys who get paid for those innings and don't do much, and then the inverse, former starters who are on low contracts come in and be lights out in those roles. So don't love to pay relievers, but yeah, he's a solid player.
Did you watch the MLB draft lottery last night?
I was out last night.
Right.
I did not get to watch it, but I was. It was
a very funny production. I watched it. It was like they were trying to hit all the beats of the NBA draft lottery, but it was done in such a crazy low budget way. Like it was just a room in the conference room, like where the winter meetings are, and you could they pulled back and you could see like the top of the temporary curtains that they had, and they're doing the one by one franchise, and it's not like it's like Peja Stojakovic for the Kings or whoever, it's just like some unknown scouting director, like one by one. And also like nobody knows the prospects who are at stake here. So it was very funny that they were like trying to go beat by beat on what's been done before, but it was like at a very funny JV level.
Yeah, that is interesting. I saw the results. I followed that. So.
Yes. All right, Marissa, we good?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, break time.
This is a busy time of year for me with the holidays and football season converging. And I know for our listeners as well, there are parties to attend. There are trips to take. There's holiday shopping to finish. We get it. The holiday season can get busy and stressful. Freshly can ease that stress and shorten your to-do list by providing nutritious, balanced meals designed for busy lives. Freshly meals are delivered fresh and are ready to eat in 3 minutes. And their rotating menu features a variety of meal plan options to fit just you or the entire family. Freshly is the meal subscription service that delivers delicious, satisfying meals right to your door. Just heat and eat. No cooking or cleanup required. What I like about Freshly is it gives you more time to enjoy the holidays instead of just cooking. And it fits all the hosts on this show and all of our listeners because it can be gluten-free or dairy-free. It can be vegan or vegetarian. You can focus on low carb, or it can have your favorite dish for the holiday season. And if you have fun holiday plans, you'll have time to thank Freshly. The holiday season can get hectic with parties and extra commitments. Let Freshly help because they have a nutritious meal plan you'll actually like. Pick from a rotating menu of over 35 tasty, balanced meals for every dietary preference. And you can find flexible plans that fit your lifestyle anywhere from 4 to 12 meals per week. Whether you're calorie conscious, gluten-free, a plant-based pasta lover, or all of the above, switch up meals, skip a week, change your plan, or cancel at any time. It's that easy. You can skip the frozen aisle and let Freshly cook for you. You can chill, heat, and enjoy. Toss your meals in the fridge, then heat them up, and they're ready to eat in just 3 minutes. No cooking, no dishes, no lost time. Simply heat, eat, and repeat. And now get $140 off your first 5 orders. Make mealtime a little easier this holiday season and let Freshly take care of the cooking for you. Order today and get $140 off your first 5 orders at freshly.com/birds for a limited time. That's freshly.com/birds for $140 off your first 5 orders. The weather's changing, but you know what hasn't changed for a long time? Your underwear. If you're still rocking worn out cotton undies, now's the time for a new pair of Tommy John's Apollo men's underwear. In Tommy John underwear, you're that much more comfortable, so you can do everything better. Name a problem with other underwear, and Tommy John solved it. Tommy John's breathable, lightweight fabric has 4 times the stretch of competing brands. They come with a no wedgie guarantee, thanks to a non-rolling waistband and legs that never ride up. Plus, they feature a horizontal quick draw fly. Hammock pouch support stops the awkward swing and slap, giving everyone something to be grateful for. With over 18 million pairs sold, people love Tommy John underwear. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers, they have fanatics. Plus, everything's backed with Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantee. Go to TommyJohn.com/athletic right now for 20% off your first order. 20% off at TommyJohn.com/athletic. TommyJohn.com/athletic. See site for details.
All right. Back on Birds with Friends. Bo, Zach, and Marissa. What are you laughing at, Zach? Swing and slap? I mean, come on.
I was not looking at matter of fact. Yeah, I was trying to smile. They teach you when you're on television. I was on television for a few years that when
Flex?
you're not
Okay.
that when you're not speaking to smile, right? So yeah.
I will say when I was editing the ads, that did give me a little chuckle.
Yeah, I mean, come on. It's a very funny line of ad copy. I think we can all admit. All right. Andre Sachre, Zach. Now that they gotta create a spot for Avonte Maddox in theory, and that's like for like in terms of positions they play. But this is a part of the same conversation we've had about the organizational emphasis or de-emphasis on special teams. Andre Sachre is one of their best special teams players. Zach McPherson's been very good this year, so you could argue either one of those two is the best guy on the outside, but he's a starting guy in punt coverage and in punt return. I think he's out of elevations now. Is he the guy to cut? I mean, instead of Trey Sermon, or I guess Covey is coming off a big game, but how do you read this in terms of special teams and the way that the Eagles are moving forward?
I think you've been dead on, to be frank, with your evaluation or with your analysis of the roster, right? Of how they manage those spots. They want to use those back of the roster spots for developmental players that they're afraid would be signed elsewhere. Former pedigree draft picks or undrafted guys that they like. You're talking Trey Sermon, Janarius Robinson, Ian Book. You're talking Josh Jobe, and you saw Reed Blankenship come in.
I did not think that we were ever going to see Janarius Robinson back on the active roster this year. I mean, I know obviously
you thought it was just stashed, yeah.
I thought it was a stash situation, yeah, but
yeah. So
maybe he'll be up now with Quinn out.
And so that's the way they've gone now. Are there situations like, for instance, we saw, Teron Jackson earlier this season where they cut him. He goes through waivers. He can get to your practice squad. Perhaps that's the case with a Josh Jobe or a Trey Sermon or someone like that. It seems they don't want to take that risk, and they would rather play the practice squad elevation shuffle game with special teams. And, perhaps Christian Ellis is up again this week or someone else is up again this week. But they would rather not use those roster spots on players they feel they can develop.
I'm guessing this means that Josh Jobe is now ready to take that role and is healthy. I guess, right?
One would think.
He's been inactive the last several weeks.
Yeah, one would think. Right.
Okay.
But
just something. I mean, you're the special teams X's and O's guy.
I'm not the special teams X's and O's guy.
Conan asked, do elevations reset if he's cut and brought back to the practice squad?
I don't think so.
No,
Now,
I don't think so either, but I'm not
also,
positive.
The limit is actually it's a little bit not disqualifying because it just means that you can still bring them up. They just go through waivers, and so they could just bring him up and like keep putting him through waivers every week.
Yes,
which seems like a tough life for Andre Sastre to live, but
especially this time of year because there are teams that might put in a claim because their seasons are out. They want to see what someone else can do. And that would really suck if you were on the top team in the league and then you get claimed by,
He's an older player too. So it's not like if he gets claimed somewhere, he's got a shot to like earn a long-term role. It's like he's got to just play out the string for the Houston Texans. What are we doing?
Yeah.
True, but the flip side is if you're claimed, you're on a 53-man roster.
True.
And as we've seen, as Bo did a great job detailing in the piece about Marissa and Michael, like that is people work their lives to, and the difference between practice squad and 53 is relevant contract wise. It's relevant status wise. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's relative. It's relevant like pension wise. You need a certain amount of accrued seasons to be eligible for the NFL pension.
And if you're claimed off waivers, I think I don't know if they have to officially have you on the roster for 3 games, but you're given 3 game checks no matter what. I think they could add you to the roster and cut you, but then you're paid for 3 active games at least.
Okay.
So, and 3 games is, I believe, qualifies you for an accredited
for season.
Accredited or accrued, they're very weird. I don't.
How is the big fella doing? How many games does he have left on IR?
Hopefully this is the last game.
All right.
So he's doing a lot better, feeling a lot better. Every day he tells me his workouts are very good. So he's very annoying to watch games with. So I hope he's back very soon.
I hope so too.
Is he helping out at all
not to be
around the house?
He has been very helpful. I will give him that.
Okay.
He's done a few loads of laundry.
You're looking to the side like he's putting the pressure on you right now.
No, he's not here right now. Wednesday's a long day. No, I would be honest. Are you kidding? Yeah. So he's been pretty helpful. He actually cooked dinner last night. So
wow, what did he make?
What did he make?
He made rice, chicken, and broccoli. So
all right.
And like it didn't come out at breakfast time, which is normally, he is a very slow cook. Like he'll start cooking and that meal would take him like 4 hours, but it was done in like an hour. It was very good.
All right.
Yeah.
MD making it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he set the table?
No. He wanted it. He always wants to eat in front of the TV. I'm like, can we sit at the table for once? We're very bad with that, especially when we get takeout or DoorDash.
Sure.
Like, let's watch a show. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But we had to sit at the table dinner last night. So
that's nice.
Big night. Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of Michael Dunn, one of his former teammates linked to the Eagles, Zach, and was asked about Nick Sirianni. You talked about it. Do you think it would make any sense at all for the Eagles to add Odell Beckham?
No, I don't.
Neither do
now, look, if Quez Watkins was out for the year and you had a strong evaluation of Odell, perhaps, but I don't get the sense Quez Watkins is going to be out for the year, number one. And number two, even if he was, I don't know if that's the route that I would go. Look, I mean, I think the world of Odell's talent. It's been a few years since he's been the player who, since he's been that type of player. He was really good in the Super Bowl last year. But the Eagles have a top 2 that's kind of not moving, you're going to get Goddard back potentially next week. So it seems to be more of a vanity signing if the Eagles were to do it. I would not like it. I mean, if there's smoke behind the Eagles' reported interest, there's only 2 things that I could point to. Number one being that Howie calls on everybody, right? Or number 2, that 2 teams that are interested in him in terms of have had visits are Giants and the Cowboys, and perhaps the Eagles want to drive that price up, or something of that nature, right? They're trying to get in to put some heat on those other teams, but I'd be surprised if he's wearing green.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the Eagles actually signed him, it would be a bit of a red flag, right? Because one, like, they need him less, and so if the wide receiver starved teams in the mix aren't willing to sign him, that's pretty big signal, right? There's the report that the Cowboys did their medical and don't think he's going to be ready to play anytime soon, and it's also like you can't just keep signing these big names just because they're big names, and they don't need him. What are they doing? That would be, I mean, there's no reason to like get upset about it because it seems so ridiculous. But if it did happen, I think it would be nuts.
Also, in terms of big names, like Linval Joseph is a big name among like hardcore football fanatics, and Ndamukong Suh, he's a big name among like casual football fanatics. Odell Beckham Jr. is a big name in like pop culture, right? TMZ would do something on Odell Beckham Jr., not on Linval Joseph, let's say. No disrespect to Linval, although he probably might take that as a compliment, right? Or I shouldn't say probably, who knows? But Odell is that really throws something into the culture chemistry mix. Not to say that he takes away from it, but I mean, there's a spotlight on your team for what would it be, your fourth receiver, your third receiver, right? I don't know if that's the route you want to go.
Yeah, I think that's well said. All right, Zach Berman, what else we got to talk about?
I want to know what you guys think about the Titans firing their GM.
Oh, yes. We should talk about this.
Yeah.
We had the exact this news broke when we were at a coordinator press conferences yesterday. And we had the same reaction that, like, there's got to be something else to this story. Either, he did something that is very bad, or, like, this is Vrabel winning a power play, which I think you could read between the lines has sort of been at play for a while. But for them to do it now with so much season left to go while they're in position to win the division again, it screams that, like, it's not just performance-based as much as I think people want to draw the line, the direct line from AJ Brown's performance to just whacking him. Because, like, what are the chances that, like, it's not like John Robinson made the unilateral decision to not pay AJ Brown, right? Like, that had to have been an ownership involved decision.
One would think. Now, I do think they mismanaged the AJ Brown situation. We agreed on that, but it would really strike me as overreaction to firing your GM because the guy you traded had a big game against you. That's why I think there's got to be a lot more to this story. I certainly
just because of the timing.
Yeah, the timing is very odd here. And so, yeah, I got to think there's a lot more. I didn't get a chance to watch Vrabel's press conference today. Excuse me. I know he had one. I don't want to be like that reporter who demands that someone has to talk, right? But I do think if you fire your GM in the middle of the season, there's a degree of accountability you have to the fan base to
after giving him an extension in February.
Yeah. So I don't want to speak for Titans fans, but the Titan is it Amy Adams Shrunk? Is that her name?
Amy Adams did have a beard.
Yeah. I mean, there should be a degree of explanation that comes with that. So I'm hoping there's more clarity soon, but I don't think he's done a particularly good job in the past year and a half. I thought he did a good job earlier on there. That said, they're a team that has won relatively consistently, and they're in first place right now, right? It seems like an odd move to make at this time.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I think if you were splitting up the turkeys of who's responsible for the Titans' success, you would give it overwhelmingly to Vrabel. I mean, Robinson has whiffed on some early round draft picks pretty badly. He gave up a second and a fourth for Julio Jones. He's made some bad moves, but he's got some other things right. And the roster itself is good and deep enough where Vrabel's been able to make chicken salad. It does feel like if it feels like this is a Vrabel. Did you see what just happened? Like, get this guy out of here. Let me get my own guy in here. It seems like that's. I mean, I don't want to speculate, but to speculate.
I don't know. I mean, I thought that like Vrabel was John Robinson's guy in that, they had the Patriots background together. But as we've seen in the NFL, there's a lot of dynamics behind the scenes with these things. I don't know enough to say what occurred. It would really surprise me if it was simply performance related at this point in the season. I got to think there's other dynamics at play.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think we got Mr. Duggan coming on in a minute. So why don't we take our second break? We'll come back. We're going to talk a little New York Football Giants, that classy organization, with Dan Duggan from The Athletic. Stay tuned for that. And then we'll get a little bit more into that matchup on Friday when we've got Swooper in the afternoon.
It's time to knock that next business idea out of the park with Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Forget the off-season work. Shopify makes it simple to sell to anyone from anywhere. Whether you're selling warm-ups or wall hangers, it's time to start selling with Shopify and join the platform simplifying commerce for millions of businesses worldwide. With Shopify, you'll customize your online store to your brand, discover new customers, and build the relationships that create diehard fans. Shopify fields all the sales channels to grow a winning business, from an in-person POS system to an all-in-one e-commerce platform, even across social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And thanks to 24/7 support and free on-demand business courses, Shopify is on your team every step of the way. It's how every minute new sellers around the world score their first sale with Shopify, and you can too. Shopify is the secret to becoming a business champion by making it simple for anyone to sell their products anywhere, taking the guesswork out of selling. When you're ready to take your winning idea to the world, team up with Shopify, the commerce platform powering millions of businesses down the street and around the globe. Try out Shopify for free today and start selling anywhere. This is Possibility powered by Shopify. Sign up for a free trial at shopify.com/birds, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/birds to start selling online today. Shopify.com/birds. So Saturday night, my wife and I wanted to have a nice dinner, but we were eating at home. We didn't have a babysitter, so we couldn't go out. You know what we did? We had the steakhouse experience in our own home with Omaha Steaks. That's right, we grilled Omaha Steaks, and you can too. The holidays are here. Achieve gifting greatness when you give the gift of perfectly aged, tender, and delicious Omaha Steaks. The steak experts at Omaha Steaks have put together special curated gift packages to help take the guesswork out of gifting and make you a holiday hero. Go to omahasteaks.com and use code BIRDS at checkout to get $30 off your order. Send an assortment of mouth-watering favorites guaranteed to impress, like the legendary Butcher's Cut Filet Mignon, air-chilled boneless chicken, ultra-juicy burgers, and even easy-to-prepare comfort meals that are ready in a flash. Omaha Steaks is ready to ship your order right away, so shop early and beat the shipping rush. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code BIRDS at checkout. Omaha Steaks is a gift from the heart, a gift that will be remembered with every unforgettable bite. Order with complete confidence today, knowing you're ordering the very best. Visit omahasteaks.com, use promo code BIRDS at checkout to get an extra $30 off your order.
Welcome back to Birds with Friends. Pleased to be joined now by our colleague at The Athletic, Dan Duggan, the man they call Hacksaw, who covers the Giants. Dan, how are you, first of all?
I'm doing great. Have I been on this before? I don't know if I have. Maybe once or twice in the past. I don't recall.
I think once before.
Okay.
Yeah, I think once last season.
It was clearly memorable.
Well, the Giants are so bad that have been historically so bad. We didn't need to know too much about them, but that has changed this year. And so we want you to give us a little scoop on the Brian Daboll-led Giants. This team coming off a tie, and it seems like they have regressed a little bit after maybe performing over their peripherals the first half of the season, but still a dangerous team here. What's the 10,000-foot view on what you've seen from the Giants this season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, nobody saw that 6-1, 7-2 start coming at all. I mean, I predicted them to win 5 games, so I was kind of out of that running after 7 weeks. So I didn't look too good there. But I mean, you looked at it, they came in, new regime, and trust me, I've covered a lot of new regimes. That first year is usually rough and takes a little time to get their footing. And they just went the complete opposite direction here, where they came firing out of the gates. Obviously, had that win down in Tennessee when Dable went for 2 and really kind of breathed some life into the franchise that desperately needed it. And then it was like they just, had a decent schedule, but they also had some, at the time we didn't know the Packers were going to be bad when they beat them in London. That was an impressive win at the time. But then they come back. They beat Baltimore. I can't remember. Baltimore was the next week, I believe. And that was a legitimate big win and comeback win. They closed it out with some big, forced some big turnovers on Lamar Jackson. So you started like, what is going on here? Because it was you couldn't just dismiss the results anymore. But then, like you said, I think we all knew that what's sustainable. The way they were playing was you're just very conservatively on offense, just trying to. They had this saying, which was pretty good actually, when they were in Jacksonville. They try and get teams to the deep end and then drown them. So it's kind of a little graphic, but also it did sum up the way they played. Whereas they just fought and hung around. They never let anyone pull away. They really hadn't gotten blown out until recently. And they just always were in the games late and somehow came up with a big play. But again, that's tough to do week in and week out. And have kind of hit a little speed bump here. They went out to Seattle. That kind of knocked them down a peg. And then since that Seattle game, they're 1-3-1. The one win was against the Texans. So, that I guess it still counts, but certainly wasn't the most impressive performance. The tie against Washington, but otherwise, it's been a little bit of a skid here, which again, I think we all foresaw. No one thought they were going to finish, 13-4. But now the question is, can they right the ship? Because they still are in a good position. They did so much work in that first half that they just need to kind of continue to fight and claw and just get to the finish line and hopefully get to the playoffs for their sake for the first time since 2016.
And now you mentioned your experience covering different coaching regimes on this show. Our listeners know we've had some fun with Joe Judge and Pat Shurmur. What makes this administration, if you will, different?
Yeah, it's tough because a lot of, Ben McAdoo's first year was 11-5. So everyone felt good about him. Then he came back with the slick back hair and it was all downhill from there. The Pat Shurmur regime, it was never really that.
But it turns out he was right about Geno.
He's right about a lot of things. He's right about Patrick Mahomes. He's right about a few things. So yeah, listen to him on quarterbacks, I guess. He was also right about Baker Mayfield. He didn't like him, and we saw how that turned out. But then Pat Shurmur was not the most inspiring campaign. I'm sure people from Philly are not shocked by that. And then Joe Judge, I know he was kind of mocked in Philly, but that first year for a 6-10 season, people were flying high the way they finished. And there was that whole thing where he blasted the way the Eagles handled that last game, which I know how that was received elsewhere. But in New York, it was yeah, this guy, he's going for broke, and everyone loved it. And
he thought they were beating the Bucs in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, he did. Which I don't think is crazy. They played the Bucs tough that year on Monday night. They lost by 2, and but that's neither here nor there. But then the wheels fell off. So with Dable, it's I was not going to fall for the trap of the honeymoon phase again. Oh, this guy, he's so different. It's because every coach is, different than the previous one. And he was way more laid back and more of a player's coach than Judge. But I was all right, let's see what happens when the game start. A little adversity strikes. And again, they come out of the gates 6-1. You're okay, well, maybe we're not going to have to experience any adversity. Because I think the biggest difference in him, everyone wants to culture, all that stuff. Yeah, it's great. The difference is really just schematically, they're a better coach team than they have been these past regimes. Defensively, Wink Martindale, I was pretty skeptical of him because you saw what happened last year in Baltimore when he didn't have the personnel. And so I looked at this Giants roster, there's not great personnel, but his just relentless pressure is, overwhelms some opponents and definitely is the reason why they got off to that good start more than anything else. But offensively, again, limited personnel, but I think Dable and Mike Kafka, surprise, surprise, upgrade from Joe Judge and Jason Garrett. So they've done enough. They pulled enough levers to just kind of squeeze everything out of this roster. And again, I think that's why you're starting to see some regression because it is still a deeply flawed roster with some serious limitations, and yet injuries have made it even worse. But Dable, I think it's really X's and O's. Yes, the culture stuff is great. We're seeing a little bit more of the New England Brian Dable lately than the Buffalo Brian Dable. He's been a little more terse with us, and you can tell it's really getting to him. Anyone watched that Cowboys game, he lost his mind on the touchdown that got negated by an ineligible receiver downfield. So he's not just jolly old Brian Dable when times have gotten tough. So it'll be interesting to see how he weathers these last 5 weeks.
Well, in terms of the X's and O's and the schematics, good coaching, as we've talked about on this show, is making accentuating that your players' strengths and hiding their weaknesses, right? And so Daniel Jones, who is not a perfect quarterback, obviously, has been having a fine year, it seems like, right? The Giants are 15th overall in offensive DVOA, and I think surprisingly 10th in passing DVOA. What have they done to help out Daniel Jones and make this offense, average?
Yeah, fine is like the best Daniel Jones word.
Right.
Like, it's not like you can't say, oh, he's been great and really good, but he's been fine. And that's still saying something when you look at the supporting cast he has, because, it's been a million years now they've been trying to rebuild this offensive line. Andrew Thomas is playing like at a borderline all-pro level at left tackle. There's, they're excited about Evan Neal at right tackle, the, number 7 pick this year, but he missed some time with injury and he's kind of had some rookie struggles. The interior line is still kind of a mess. So they had Saquon Barkley, who was playing like out of his mind the first 5 games of the year. And there's a real like cliff there where he hurt his shoulder in that Packers game in London. And he has not been the same guy since. I think it's the last 5 games. He's averaging 3.3 yards per carry. He was like 5.3 yards per carry to start the season. So that's been something that's really limited this offense. And then, the wide receiving room is ridiculous. You weren't feeling great about it coming into the year, but at least on paper, you had Sterling Shepard, Wan'Dale Robinson, the 2nd-round pick, and Kadarius Toney, of course, last year's 1st-round pick. None of those guys are either on the roster or on the active roster because, Shepard and Robinson tore their ACLs. They're done for the year. And Toney's obviously his hamstrings are still acting up in Kansas City. The Kenny Golladay revival, that never happened. It's such a bare bones offense. And yet, like, that's why my point about they've squeezed everything out of it. Like, they do just bootlegs and play actions, and they were doing the wildcat for a stretch early in the season. They'll do 3 running backs on the field, 2 running backs on the field. Like, they're just constantly just kind of throwing. It's like a junk ball pitcher, and they're just trying to get by. And it worked for a long time. You go back and look at that Bears game, which I know they don't have a great defense, but like they were doing like bootleg play actions. And it was like the Bears defense. It was like a magic trick for like a 4-year-old. They're like, what is going on? And like Daniel Jones would just turn the corner and there'd be nobody there for 20 yards. And he ran for a couple touchdowns that game. So like that stuff is obviously strictly game plan based, but then you just kind of keep doing it. And obviously defenses are smart enough. You watch the Washington game, they ran those bootleg play actions and there were guys just sitting on the routes they were trying to throw. And Daniel Jones had to like, put his head down and grind ahead for like 2 yards. So that's going to be the challenge here. What is their counter to the counters they're starting to see now? But yeah, early in the year, they were just squeezing everything they could. Hope for a Saquon 50-yard run. They needed that type of an explosive run to really get the offense going. Lately, they've actually thrown the ball deeper a little bit more and with kind of mixed results. Darius Slayton's had a couple of big catches the last 2 games. I think that's something they need to do because they're just not good enough to grind out like 14-play, 75-yard drives, which they did somehow early in the season. But I think it's just kind of caught up to them. It's just a really hard way to live.
A few times you've mentioned the limited personnel here. We understand Brandon Beane is not Joe Shane. Joe Shane's not Brandon Beane. There's a timeline there, but Shane did a good job. It seemed like with those 2 picks in the top 10 and the way he navigated the draft process. What's the overall plan for the roster? What's the time horizon here, and what has stood out about the way he's built this team?
It's interesting because that first offseason is the one you're like, oh, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? He was so hamstrung by the cap that he didn't really do anything. Obviously he cut James Bradberry, which that one hurts and obviously helps Philly quite a bit, but he cut Logan Ryan, he cut Blake Martinez, he got rid of a lot of guys. He came in and inherited 2 top 10 picks, like probably the one thing you could thank Dave Gettleman for. At least he left his successor with that. And yeah, like Kayvon Thibodeau has definitely started to turn the corner a little bit, literally and figuratively. And then Evan Neal, again, he's a rookie left, tackle. There's going to be some rough moments there, but I think they feel good about him overall. Really, the problem with their draft class, so many of them are on the shelf. I think they have 4 or 5 who have torn their ACLs. Like it's just a crazy rate, and they had like 11 picks, but 5 of them are on IR. So that's been brutal. Like Wan'Dale Robinson was a guy who he missed a lot of time, came back, started to look good, and then he tears his ACL. So it's been like kind of an incomplete. I think it's gonna be so much more interesting what he does next offseason because he kind of just, like I said, he kind of like stood back this year and it wasn't a lot of tough decisions. It was mostly just getting rid of guys for cap reasons. Now next year he's gonna have a lot of cap space. He's also got some major decisions on Daniel Jones, on Saquon Barkley. Does he start extending guys like Dexter Lawrence, Xavier McKinney, Andrew Thomas? Like that's when we're going to find out kind of what his vision is for this roster because he kind of came in, his hands were tied. He had to hope that like Kadarius Toney and Kenny Golladay and Sterling Shepard, these guys he inherited, would provide something. And they're going to have to remake this wide receiver room from scratch basically, except for Wan'Dale Robinson next year, who will be coming back from a torn ACL, so you can't even totally rely on him. So that's what's going to be so interesting how he builds this thing going forward because I think he kind of had to just put on autopilot this year. He didn't do anything crazy, which I think was smart. He didn't like start moving contracts around to try to squeeze guys in. And I think that's the one where he got probably criticized by fans. Like, couldn't you have done something to keep James Bradberry? And obviously he was like, no, he's just so disciplined. It was not going to push money into the future. Again, you can debate with that whether or not that was the right call, but that was his plan. Next offseason, that can't be the plan again. You have to start getting aggressive. You have to start filling some of these holes. So it's going to be fascinating to see how he goes about doing that.
I think we want to get to James Bradbury in a second, but I'll save that. I'll let Zach ask that because it's his boy. I'm sure you get this question all the time. But Daniel Jones, what do you think what do you think the future is? Will he be the quarterback next year?
Oh yeah, I think about that question like every day, which is a sad state of like my life. But yeah, coming into the year, I thought there was no chance. Like, I mean, they didn't pick up the 5th-year option, which is like that's like saying, hey, it was nice knowing you. And I thought they're gonna be bad, so I was like, it's gonna be an easy decision. They're gonna have a top 10 pick. He's not gonna play that well, and they can just move on. It's an easy call. But the fun part about sports and contract years is like it was at least in his control for 17 games. Whereas if they win enough games and he plays well enough, it gets a lot harder to move on. Now, the question is, we're this far in the season. I still don't know where the scale still haven't.
Right,
totally
it really could go like completely opposite directions down these last 5 games, right?
Because like he hasn't like been Josh Allen 2.0, which that was never going to happen, but that was kind of the dream when you bring Brian Dable in. So if you had done that, then obviously they keep him. Like, let's just say they make the playoffs and then they lose in the first round. They're picking like 22nd, 24th, whatever it'll be. That's a tough spot to go get a quarterback. Now, we know Buffalo did that in 2018. They traded up a couple times to go get Josh Allen. Like, that's not the easiest blueprint to duplicate, but is that what Joe Shane's going to try? That's what we don't know. I will say, just based on what I think of their view of Daniel Jones, I think they're going to be looking for an upgrade because, again, they didn't take that 5th-year option. They had 3 years of tape, didn't pick up the 5th-year option, and now they've had him. And again, the way we've talked about how they've managed this offense, it's not like they have total confidence in this guy. Like, wow, this guy's way better than we thought. It's more like, let's not let him lose games. And he's done a good job of that. Don't get me wrong. Like, he has been, the whole turnover prone reputation is like out the window. He's like been one of the best at not turning the ball over this year, as far as especially interceptions. But is that what you want to build with? You're going to franchise tag? You're going to give him a big contract? I can't see any way they do that. Like, is there some middle ground where they say, let's do like a Jameis Winston, like 2-year, $30 million contract? Like, I guess, like, will Jones have better options? I don't know. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. I just think it's crazy we're this deep into the season, and I have like less clarity. Like, again, I thought coming in slam dunk, he's not back. He's done enough. The team's done enough where it makes you wonder, and is there a better replacement? But yeah, I still have no idea. I think these next 5 weeks are really going to tell the story, because it was funny at the bye week when we spoke to Joe Shane. Like, he was talking about, I want to bring Saquon back. I want to talk about extension with other guys like, Dexter Lawrence or Julian Love. You didn't say them by name. With Daniel Jones was like, we still got 8 weeks to go. Like, he wouldn't even like tip his hand at all there. Like, he's going to let this whole thing play out, evaluate it in totality, and then obviously you have to measure. Okay, it's easy to say let Daniel Jones go, but like then Tyrod Taylor's your quarterback next year. Like, let's figure out what the replacement options are going to be. It's going to be a tough call. It's going to be really interesting to see how that does shake out.
Now, Bo deferred the James Bradbury question to me, and Darius Slay said a few weeks ago that the question we all need to be asking is why the Giants let this guy go. Richard Sherman said he didn't understand why the Giants let this guy go. Whenever this question has come up to me, I've actually deferred people to your article or your collection of stories you're reporting this offseason, because you were on top of the whole Bradbury situation. But I couldn't send Darius Slay your articles from the offseason. Explain to our listeners, if you can, why the Giants did let Bradbury go. And I guess the next step of that question is, how couldn't they get compensation for him?
Yeah, I mean, those two questions dominated my offseason probably as much as, the Daniel Jones topic, because it was just a saga. It went on for so long. Like I said, like they cut Logan Ryan like right away before free agency, which is usually when those cap casualties happen. But the Bradbury one just dragged out and dragged out. Now, like, again, it was strictly a cap thing. When Joe Shane got hired, he said like his first day, I need to cut $40 million off the cap. So like, I'm not that good at math, but you could kind of keep a running tally. And it was like, I think they got, I used to know this, chapter and verse, but I think it was like 12 million they got, let's just say, from cutting James Bradbury. That big $12 million chunk was going to have to be a big piece of the 40 million. There was no other way to make that type of savings. So you just knew they had to do something with him. Now, when you look at James Bradbury, the player, you think, yeah, why wouldn't you just be able to trade this guy? Like, he's a quality corner. You're still like, maybe 28, 29, not over the hill by any stretch, coming off a Pro Bowl year 2 years ago. And I think the problem was teams kind of knew what the Giants' end game was going to be. So no one was going to make a really strong offer. Like, I mean, obviously, to your listeners that like hearing this, like Howie Roseman played this brilliantly, where he just waited. And there was multiple times where you thought they were going to have to do something with Bradbury. There was like soft deadlines. Like, he had a $2 million salary guarantee out of his like $13.5 million salary, got guaranteed on the first day of the league year. So you figure, they're going to cut him for that, because otherwise they have to eat that, which they ended up doing. Then it was like leading up to the draft. You're like, well, teams are going to, want to get a cornerback here. And then that went through the draft. It's like, oh, if you missed out on a corner, now you really have to get it. So they ended up cutting like right after the draft. I think they realized like they couldn't keep playing this game of chicken. No one was going to meet their offers, because what actually happened, they had real trade talks with two teams. It was the Jets, who we all thought were going to be bad, and the Texans, who we correctly concluded would be bad. And those teams were smart. They had really low ball offers because the Giants don't care what the contract James Bradbury is going to go get as next stop. They just want any kind of compensation. Yeah. So those teams offered like late round picks, but they wanted to restructure Bradbury's deal, lock him in for like 2 years, like $16 million, I think was the figures from Houston. I think the Jets, that's smart because otherwise he'd have a $13 million cap at this year. That's going to be tough for anybody to fit. And so Bradbury's camp is like, wait, why are we going to facilitate a trade to a bad team and take less money for it and lock in for an extra year? Because the one thing he did with the Eagles, obviously, was a 1-year deal.
Yep.
And now he's going to cash in because he bet on himself, which is obviously the smart thing to do in a situation. Like, why lock in at a below market rate? Because the Giants really squeezed him by holding him as long as they did. If they, there was not going to be a robust market in May when teams have kind of already set their books. So that was how that shook out. The Giants just couldn't make that trade happen because, again, Bradbury's not going to facilitate a bad move for himself just to help out their cap situation. So that's where it came to a head, where it was right after the draft, like I said. They had to pull the trigger, and they had to kind of move on. They had to sign their draft picks. They had no cap space to even do that. And then, of course, I know a lot of teams were interested, but Philly was a good situation. I'm sure the offer was competitive, not better than others, but it was more, I think it was a really good defense. He wanted to go back and play on grass. There's a lot of factors, and obviously he made a really good call because he's had a great year, and it's worked out really well for him and for Philly.
Last one for me, Dan. What is the classiest thing about the Giants organization in your opinion?
Well, that's a long list, so I have to think. No, my favorite example of that, though, because that's always kind of like the air about it, but like it doesn't usually get said. And Dave Gettleman, when they signed Kyle Rudolph to like a 2-year, $12 million deal off of like a abysmal season, like it was, the fork was sticking out his back in Minnesota, and the Giants like, no, like he was a Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, like we'll bring him in here. And but so anyway, so they brought him in, and there was like a snafu during his physical where it was discovered I think he had a foot injury in his last year in Minnesota, and they discovered he had like a Liz Frank, which obviously we know is like a really bad injury. It needed surgery. So
dreaded
okay,
mistress.
So it was like, okay, 2 years, $12 million. Like maybe we can work around those figures here. And now that the guy who's like 30-something years old who has a major foot injury, and they didn't. They just left the contract as is that they agreed upon before the physical. Again, like you can do per game bonuses, you can do incentives,
right,
so you can still make the guy whole if he actually produces. But so we asked Dave Gettleman, like, why didn't you do that? And he said, because we're the New York Giants and we do everything with class. And so like Kyle Rudolph had like 15 catches for 200 yards. So that classy perfect gesture was much appreciated by him, I'm sure. And then one of Joe Shane's first orders of business, of course, was cutting Kyle Rudolph when he came in, because he certainly didn't want to be on the hook for like $7 million this year for a guy who, has got 1 foot and is way over the hill. But it was still classy.
I think the real answer there is he went to Notre Dame, which they like in the Giants building.
Absolutely. Probably to a Catholic high school. Yeah,
exactly.
You're onto something there.
Last one for me is obviously Bo and I are going to get into this game on our next podcast, but from your perspective, what can the Giants do to keep this one close or to potentially win this game?
Yeah, I mean, keeping it close, like that is the one thing they've done pretty well. You need to think about that Thanksgiving day game in Dallas. Everyone thought they were going to get blown out in that game. They're really shorthanded. So like the one thing that maybe they've going for their favor in this game is they're going to be healthier. But everything I've talked about is why they've been able to keep games close. Like they're not going to come out and just start slinging the ball around and probably, it could happen, but like I don't think Daniel Jones is going to throw 3 pick sixes, the type of stuff that lets games get away. They play a very tight game where it's very conservative. But I mean, just you look at the horsepower Philly has on offense, it's a lot harder to play their style of defense where like, so blitz hurts a ton and leave, corners 1-on-1 with these wide receivers. Like the run defense hasn't been very good. So it's hard for me to figure out defensively what they can do to neutralize Philly's offense. Especially, I don't think Adoree Jackson will be back. I don't think Xavier McKinney will be back. If those guys are in the lineup, maybe you have a fighting chance, but that's the part I think is really tough. But I think offensively, they're going to have to try to just do the formula that's worked for the most part of the season, which is like pound the ball at Saquon, get Daniel Jones out of the pocket so he's not sitting duck against a good pass rush. He's going to use his legs. I'm sure he used them a lot against Washington. It is a really effective part of his game. Obviously, in Philly, everyone remembers that when he gets in the open field, very fast. Maybe doesn't always finish, but he is dangerous when he gets outside the pocket.
He's sneaky athletic, Yeah,
we're still saying that 4 years in, he still doesn't run that label. But no, it's hard for me to see them winning this game. But I won't be shocked if it's like a 1-score game in the fourth quarter, because that's just how they played. Like I will say, like even going back to Dable, like they are tough. Like they don't lay down ever. Like they were down 10-0 right out of the bat against Washington. Jones had a bad fumble. You're like, oh boy, here it comes. And then they just fight back. They actually had the lead in that game. Really probably should have won that game. So that's the one thing. I'd be surprised if they just come out and lay an egg and get beat like 40-10. Like that's just not how they've operated this year. But by the same token, I'd be surprised if they come out and like control this game and win it. I think if their best case is just get some turnovers, get a big special teams play, whatever it is. Some of those types of plays you need to pull off an upset and just win something late like they were earlier in the year. I don't think that they're going to have certainly enough firepower, like I said, to go like toe-to-toe in a shootout. But I think they'll keep it reasonably close, and maybe it's a touchdown 10-point game.
Yeah, division games are weird. It's Dable is close with Sirianni, and anytime there's like a mentor-mentee matchup, things can get weird. I don't know. Could be interesting. We'll talk about it more on the next episode. But Mr. Duggan, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And Eagles fans, if they want to, can follow you on The Athletic. And what's your Twitter handle? I should know this.
It's DDuggan21.
What's the 21 for?
It's just like my favorite number. And when I signed up for Twitter like 15 years ago, like Dan Duggan was taken. So that's all I had.
All Dropping threes wearing 21, I bet.
There you Boston, go. Right? Yeah, my Marcus Camby from my days growing up as a UMass fan, if you really want to know.
There you go.
I like that. That was the Camby versus Tim Duncan, the two big men. I became a Wake Forest fan, so there we go. All right, Dan Duggan, thank you for spending the time and giving us everything you know about the Giants. We will be back with more on Friday, but that'll do it for this episode of Birds with Friends. So for Marissa and Zach and Dan and Elijah, I'm Bo. We thank you for listening. And as always, we love you.